my word for this year is to totally surrender. Then God takes us exactly where he wants to go. So we can make plans, and that's great. We are praying about those things. So those are probably the right-ish direction, but we always need to be open to God's redirection or to his inconveniencing us for his will. I always say it that, because in the moment it feels like an inconvenience, I have a flat tire, but there's somebody we're supposed to talk to at the tire shop. I don't know what the case would be, or but we just need to be always open to that. And God has been very faithful, continuously faithful to us and to me and my family, in provisions, in never 3 steps in advance, but okay, this is the next step. This is the next step in establishing our steps.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Grace and New Life. Today, we have our special guest, Sarah Owens. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah is my friend. We go to the same church. We go to the same POT, small group at church. If you wonder what POTS stand for, what is it?
Parents of Teens.
It's a cute name.
Yes.
But because of work, job opportunities in life has led the Owens family away from us, and they're leaving soon. But before they're moving, I took the courage to ask if Sarah would like to be my guest to share her faith and her journey with y'all. And she said, yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Welcome.
Because of Sarah, I have also interviewed Jason a couple of weeks ago. We have a faithful family here. Jason is brother-in-law, younger sister's brother-in-law. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, Sarah.
Okay. I am the oldest daughter of a dairy farmer with no sons. So I have 2 sisters. And we lived on a dairy farm in the rural town of Cambridge, Idaho. Population 350 people. At least an hour from the closest grocery shopping and hospital. So that's a ways out.
Yeah. So it's a very small place. But to my understanding, or I've been dreaming to have some of experience like that, but never been to. But life must be much easier, simpler. Is it?
Maybe. We always joke that my parents' love language is work. Oh. So, and because my dad had no sons, we did do a lot of work. But we could pretty much roam anywhere. We lived about 3 miles out of town. And even as young kids, we could ride our bike to town and buy a soda and come back. We knew everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
They know it. Don't do anything wrong.
Yes. Oh, that is a thing, because if you hit somebody over the head with a tennis racket in kindergarten, they will remember it as an adult. And that may or may not have happened. So, yes. There wasn't movies to go to or restaurants really. There was 2 little restaurants in town. But the main entertainment was being with your family, working at the dairy, friends coming over, going and helping people whatever they needed. So you definitely have to be a community in that setting. Right. If the cows are out in the middle of the night, your cows are the neighbors. It doesn't matter. Everybody gets up and, you got to get them off the highway. So before somebody hits them.
Yeah. So when Jesus said love each other, or when the Bible says love thy neighbor, can I say it's much to it in your childhood when you have a closer community that people know each other very well, and you have a lot of more people. Nowadays, I think it's much easier in the bigger cities and bigger place. Busyness keep people, away from each other. But in a small place, people know each other. When one person, there's something happen in their homes, everybody else comes to help. Is that how it is for you?
For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, if the river is flooding, somebody's house is flooded, everybody's going to show up and help. Like I said, if the cows are out in the middle of the night, that isn't just a joke, that happens. And we have to all get up and, get them off the highway. We don't have no freeways there. But, yeah, if there's not EMS close by, or emergency medical services, there's not police nearby. So your neighbors are,
Everything.
are everything. Yeah. And there's like a volunteer fire department, but it's like people who have had some experience with medical, can get you started and, take you to the nearest hospital. Yeah. But I mean, it's very different than here where everything is really close. You don't really have to depend on anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe you don't even realize the people you're depending on here,
right,
where you do there.
Yeah. I was about to say, it's not that we're not depending on, we just don't realize how much. I think when everybody lost the power, we pretty much realize how much we depend on many things. And, we lost the power, and then we have friends called us, hey, we have a generator, found an AC, just when you're going through some things in life, that's when the community really shows up, the church family shows up to help this or that. And I think I was listening to something on the way here today, and somebody said, we don't realize how much we need to depend on God. Sometimes we also don't realize how much we need to depend on God's people, right? So
let people help us.
Right.
Yes.
And to go full circle, we help each other, right? So grow up in a smaller town. Was dad and mom, were they Christian? Was that a Christian family?
Yes. So yeah, my first Sunday at church, I think, was within several days of my birth. And I was there every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, my whole life. My mom, our church was small enough that there wasn't a children's pastor per se, but my mom filled that role. Okay. And my dad sang on the worship team and was on the board. So every time the doors were open, whether it was community cleanup day or whatever the case may be, we were there. Mm-hmm. So, and my parents aren't counselors per se, but they kind of had that role in the community. So we had a lot of people in our home, that were trying to work through issues. And so it was just like, it was a revolving door of learning to be welcoming people. But yeah, they're both Christians.
Yeah, that's very fortunate. I talk to many people, and I think especially in here, in this free land, because we have the freedom of faith, right? I'm just hoping it will last. Don't want to get into political. Yeah. Let's come back. But I've talked to many people, and when people like Sarah tells me, I grew up in the church, and when I was a little baby, I was at church. Mom and dad served at church, and I feel like, the sinful nature has envy in my heart because you put both of us together. We come from totally different background, and I had no idea what was God at all until I was like in my late 20, early 30. And come around to believe God. That's another whole different story. I have a point here. I say that because we don't know who you are, where you're listening, and why you're listening, but we believe God has put this program in your life to encourage you. It doesn't matter where we come from and background and, different childhood experience. We come along, we come together, we worship God together nowadays, and we are sisters in Christ. That is I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
That is a huge blessing to my life. I wanted to let you know that for sure. Now it's on the record, so it's official. So, dad, mom, were Christian they are Christian, they're believers, and strong faith family, right? So, Sarah, may I ask, have you ever wandered around? Have you ever wandered in wilderness in your own life for your faith? Or that's just, so beautifully you never left, never felt like God was away from you?
That's a really good question. Sometimes I feel like if we're raised in a Christian home, it's like easier to be lukewarm because I don't know, it's protected me from a lot of things.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some hard things that I haven't had to work through because of that. And I think that our relationship is closest with God when we're working through hard things because we're depending on Him in a way that we don't sometimes feel like we need to when things are not hard. I definitely had my own relationship with God before I left home. So it wasn't like I left home and had a time where I wasn't serving God, going to church, or, He wasn't a constant part of my life. But definitely there's been times in my adulthood where things are going well and I am not looking to Him like I should.
Okay. So you're talking about, like, I think it happens to many of us, right? When life is good. When life is good, everything is fine. On the one hand, we think we're very blessed. If we believe in God, we think God blessed us. On the other hand, we also, I hate to say this, like, we don't need Him that much. Sometimes we feel like we can do things our way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, yeah, pretty much every time where life seems like it's going too easily, I look around and I'm like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to do? Because, those times where I really felt like I've stepped out in faith, I'm doing exactly, those hard things that God's called me to do, there's so much hard about it. I mean, there's so much good about it too.
Yeah.
But so when things are too easy, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and like make sure, is this a period of rest that God's granting me, or am I just not, doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Because, I believe that the enemy, the devil, is a real thing. The Bible says it is. Yeah. And he's against us. So if we're not having any resistance, are we really doing what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are times where I've been like, okay, am I in the right, or need to take a step back? Maybe I'm lukewarm right now. Reading my Bible, once every week instead of
that was me. That was me when I first came to believe. I would have to admit, because I came from a false God worshiping culture, right? So when I first came to believe, it was hard for me to shake that off, because that mindset has been already there, because I witnessed so many people worship in the right way, in their way, worshiping false God. Now that I know it was false God, when I was little, I had no idea, right? So mostly when they're worshiping, they're asking for blessings. They're asking for protections, and that's pretty much all it's about. I've never heard, we're talking about in Hindu and Buddhist kind of a religion. I've never heard in my life witness these worship, so-called worship. I have never heard people say love, the God's love, or my love to God, until I came to Christianity. And that was a big surprise to me, because I got used to, the worship is just basically like we're asking for stuff that we don't have power, we don't have control over. So now that, okay, give it to me. That kind of relationship is how the Buddhists, how I view it anyways. So when I first came to believe, I had this habit of, okay, if life is good, like day-to-day life, there's nothing for me to ask, then God is God, I am who I am, and my life is my life. It's just like separate, And I would have to say God used many times a big stake, like get my attention. And it took me a very long time to come around and really truly understand what difficulties mean to our faith. What it's not that God wants us to suffer, it's that He wants a relationship. He wants us to pay attention to Him. What is really going on there?
Yeah, He's teaching us and parenting us and guiding us.
Yes.
Like with our kids,
Yeah.
if it was just, it's all praise and never like a correction, then, I mean, that's how they grow and learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to have
Yeah.
a bit of both.
Yeah, right. A bit of both. I think Sarah's life have been pretty much very blessed. I think I think the obedience is one thing that's critical for the blessings. I can't say that it's unfair that God blesses Sarah more than He blesses me. I can't say that because most of the time I'm not obeying. But since
we're about that.
Since we are talking about difficult and suffering, would you mind to share a little bit about your life? Life can't be just all beautiful and shiny, right? And all good. Is there anything happen in your life that you had to learn, to depend on God to overcome?
Sure. I mean, there's been many things. So, like, one of the big things that happened to me pretty early on is that around the time I was probably 5 or 6, I had a quite a bit older cousin that was like, hey, I'll give you this if you do this thing for me. And I was like, okay, because I didn't know any better. And then afterwards he was like, that was sex. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have a baby, and he's like, no, you're not old enough. And so that probably happened a number of other times. But I just thought when I got old enough, then I would have a baby. So I always had thoughts in my head like how I was going to prepare for this and plan for it. There was a piece of me that was glad it was me and not my sisters. So I felt like in all of this I had protected them. I don't know that I did completely, but I didn't know that. And so that's kind of a hard thing. It was probably a couple years. I think the first time I really shared with anybody, it was like a couple years later. I had told my mom, hey, I think I was like 4th or 5th grade. I was like, hey, I've had sex. And she's like, what's that? And I just said it. And she's like, okay. And I was like, I don't know if she heard me because there was no response.
Okay.
So, and then I didn't tell anybody else till like 7th grade. And then I had like a couple friends that I shared that with. But I've learned over time that the more I share that, the more I voice it, it takes its power away over me. So it's not like, and not that I go around and tell everybody about that, but it doesn't like make me feel like less of a person or any of that. For a while it was like, well, is it my fault because I didn't really fight him on it? Things like that I've had to work through. But, yeah. So I don't know, as I was, able to share it with people, their reactions kind of helped me realize like, that's not my fault. I'm not any less of a person. It was a terrible thing that happened. Probably I think our first date, I told my now husband, I just was upfront, like, this is part of my story. And I'm a women's healthcare provider now. So it's been redeemed over and over and over again because that's been used positively throughout my healthcare career, throughout my friendships and relationships, because a lot of women have experienced those. So I suppose that is a hardship. I'm not sure if that's what you were alluding to when you asked the question. But like, also as a healthcare provider, I've had like hard things happen. Like losses of babies on occasionally, like, hard things with moms, hard diagnoses, birth defects, stillbirth, things like that you're helping families work through, or that people blame you for, even if you haven't done anything wrong. And so every once in a while, because God's my protector, right? I'm like, you didn't protect me. But I know God's timing's perfect and his plan is perfect. And so he's always, even if I, get upset or have to work through those hard things, he's never left me or forsaken me, and, rode those waves with me. So I know that, those things weren't just happening to me, they're happening to the moms and families too. And maybe, and I know this is true in at least a couple incidences, I was placed in that situation because they needed what I had to walk through that hard thing. So, because we can do just as much good on the good days with a healthy, beautiful baby as we do on the hard days. So anyway, so it wasn't like, it was a bad thing that happened to me. It was bad, and I was there, and I deeply felt it. But God's with me and used me even in that, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It's very hard for us to, naturally, we don't feel comfortable to peel off the scars and look into the wounds and dig out and find out, what really hurting. Why am I really hurting? And especially when you look at those tragedies and you look at, things like not accident, things like not natural ways, disasters or stuff like that, but pure human evil. And when you see that, it's hard to find peace, right? But I appreciate you willing to share this, because I think that awareness alone is worth it to hear it. Because how many times, I had a conversation, we have a friend, she's very involved in human trafficking in Houston area. And before we did the research and everything, I always felt like, this, whatever that is, sexual harassment, or people don't only harass the victims, they also, nowadays there are so many things happening. They tape it, they trade, put stuff on the market, and they take the kids away and stuff like that. I always thought, that's far away from me. That's far away from me, right? So a couple of years ago, we did a study with our church group, our Chinese community church group, and so I found out some information in this topic, and I was shocked on how many cases from this area. We're talking about in the Woodlands area, how many kids in different ages, like little kids, teenagers, and they just, human trafficking is a huge thing. And sometimes, how many times we trust the babysitters? It could be anybody. Julie Peters, we did a podcast 2 months ago. She shared, a story. It's in church. It's a church small group, youth group. There is a mom grooming through her daughter to the daughter's friends. Things like that happen. It could be our friends. It could be our trusted neighbors or relatives and people like that. And I think the awareness to bring, we're not here to stir the pot to try to
or create fear.
Create fear. But we do want to know, right? We do want to be more careful, to be more cautious about who we hand our kids to take care of, or who are they hanging out with. And I think that's, appreciate you shared your experience. I think for one, we want to bring a little awareness for all parents, right? To be aware. This is a sinful world. It is a broken world. We have good friends and good people around us. We also have not so good friends around us. So we do need to be careful on that. So Sarah, years later, when you look back this event that happened in your life, my takeaway is Sarah looks at this as a positive response. She has already, with God's glory and the strength that He gives to you, you overcame it, but came around as a person because you went through terrible things. You have the sympathy to people who are facing difficult times in their lives, and you are able to help them. Right?
Yes. Well, I have been blessed. I believe it's God's design, right? He created me a certain way, and this experience has been part of His design for me. I don't think He made this happen, but it has been redeemed for the positive because I am a women's healthcare provider. And I know that greater than 1 in 3 of the women that come to me for care have sexual assault or childhood sexual abuse on their history. And so we're able to kind of talk through that and how it's affecting their physical and mental health and how it may impact their pregnancies, birth, and postpartum. They're jumping into this new role of parenting.
Oh, yeah.
It impacts those things. And so, it actually has ended up being a gift in some way. I cannot say that, it's been an opportunity to practice forgiveness too. I don't know if we really want to say those hard things that way, but really, I've had to forgive because it's easy to pick that back up and be upset about it. Yeah. But I really actually feel bad for him because he's ruined his own life. And so not saying that I pray for him on a regular basis, but the feelings aren't bad because I know God has protected me, God has redeemed the hurts, God is using it, and he's still lost.
Yeah.
So
prayer comes to play where Jesus says, pray for your enemy. We're not saying necessary to be enemy per se, but people who hurt us, hurting people.
Yeah, my mom used that phrase a lot when I was trying to get through junior high and high school, talking about all the situations at school, and it's like, why do you think they did that? Yeah. What do you think their motivation was? What do you think their home life's like? Really, I've done that through my whole life now because of that training, but it's helped me so much because usually if you can see what is motivating a person's actions, negative actions, it can give you a different grace or love for them. If you could pray for them, even if they drive you crazy, pretty soon they don't drive you crazy anymore. You just are this is why I'm here right now, and you're in my life.
Yeah. Okay, God, let me pray for this person because he's driving me crazy.
Yes.
Can you work on something so he's not driving me crazy anymore?
Well, that's got to not be your heart about it. It's just you literally want to be praying for them because pretty soon it's okay. This is what's motivating their actions, and it's usually a hurt.
And you're right. Yeah. And because especially for those who are lost, who are still lost, right? Mm-hmm. Even we pray because we believe in the power of prayer, even they never know that we prayed for years and years and years. All we want to know is one day that they come around and they can find the real life, right? That's beautiful. And the way you process it, the way that you look at it's beautiful. It's hard to say it's beautiful. It's because it's a terrible thing happened, but it's still, God can turn terrible things into beauty, right?
Beauty from ashes.
Yeah, beauty from ashes. Yes. All right. So, another reason I have to interview Sarah is because her job is so unique, and I want you guys to listen to it. So, Sarah is a women care provider, right? Healthcare provider, but uniquely, specifically, I'm not going to tell us about it.
Okay. I am a certified nurse midwife and women's health nurse practitioner, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to work in out-of-hospital birth, which means I really can respect the divine design that God has made our bodies to grow a baby, give birth, and breastfeed, and to like impart trust in that, physiologically how we're designed. Yeah, in the United States we have like a 1 in 3 C-section rate. And I'm like, wait, God designed our body. He didn't design it as a limit. We don't have a fail rate of 1 in 3. And so, anyway, so I get to really encourage women in their walk with Christ through like trusting your body and the divine design. Because, I mean, I always get excited about divine design. Like everything that we look at, and all the way down to the like cellular level and below. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. But it's actually an opportunity for witness as well. Yeah.
So before we started, we kind of like chit chat, and I learned because you had animals, right?
Yes. Yes.
You have when you were little, right? Yes. You have seen them giving birth to the little ones, and
yes, many
times. And then when you look at human, and wait a minute, why do we have to use knife in certain medical situation? We don't have options.
Sure.
That's a blessing that nowadays the medical technology is so good. But in general, if we're talking about regular birth, right? As women, we should be able to give birth naturally, right?
Yes.
So,
sure. Okay, yeah. I grew up on a dairy farm, and besides that, we had a whole bunch of cows having babies on a regular basis because, you know, you have to have babies to get milk, right? That comes after the babies. So besides that, my dad always had like this hobby farm on the side. So we had pigs and goat and
I heard a lot of bacon.
Yes, sheep, and of course our dogs and cats were having babies too. So babies were like around all the time. And my dad is very much, I think he would call it a naturalist, which is like keep your hands off and just let the process happen unhindered unless there's a very, very, very good reason.
Okay.
And for that reason, I saw lots of babies be born just perfectly. Very, very rarely did we need to do any kind of intervention. And then I got to nursing school in college and my OB rotation, and every single one of the patients had a C-section.
Oh.
Every single one. I was like, what is going on here? Medicalized birth. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's for me. So then I found out I was pregnant about 2 weeks after college graduation. I was like, I'm going to a midwife. I'm going to avoid the cascade of interventions so I don't end up with a cesarean. Not that all cesarean is a life-saving procedure.
Yes,
but to have it be a third of all births in the United States, that's kind of crazy. And there are risks to it, so you don't want to just have that for no reason. You got to have a good reason for it. So a lot of our reasons are because we've stressed the baby out with Pitocin or blood pressure dropping with epidural, things like that. So,
and when we're talking about natural birth, we're not only talking about giving birth without C-section. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you also help those moms if they wanted to give birth like without any painkillers. Like, I never get. If I knew you before I give birth. No, Frankie will tell you differently because I was horrible, can't bearing the pain. So I never experienced that beautiful, like 100% natural birth. One of my friend, if you're listening, Evelyn, I admire you so much. She had 2 babies born in that way. But so I wanted to invite you to tell us a little bit about that whole process in case some of us our listeners, our audience are listening, they're getting ready for, having babies. Maybe there's opportunities out there.
Yeah. So I hear you saying beautiful. And of course I do think it's beautiful because for me, it feels like worship because we're trusting God's divine design of our body, right?
Yeah.
So to respect that, it does feel like worship. But it is still hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know, as a healthcare provider, as a a person who loves people. There's so much growth that happens in a woman through their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And to be able to walk the hard road with them through their labor is such a gift. So we, the most uncomfortable position to be in labor is on your back. So when you get mamas up and moving around, and then you have gravity, you're moving your pelvis. It's like that tight ring, right? This is your pelvis and the baby's head, right? And it's tight fit, so you got to wiggle those hips. So get you up and moving, and get baby each down. So anyway, we just get up, I don't know, one of my favorite job descriptions is hand holder. We get to hold mom's hand, be that soothing voice, be able to recommend position changes, and be the lifeguard in the room. And I don't know, encourage, listen to, be there with through the hard. It's a pretty big gift.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you mentioned holding hands. I'm imagining squeezing.
Oh yeah. I have some pictures of some very bruised hands.
Yeah, it's such a big pain, right? Talk about birth. The first time I read the book of Genesis, and I read too when the serpent deceived Adam, Eve, and God brought down this curse in human being, and says to Eve that the pain for birth is going to increase, right? I didn't like because when I read that, I had my first child, and the second one was on the way, and I didn't like that. I was like, why would you do that? Just curse Adam. It's all Adam's fault. No, it's so we have to take on our consequences, right? The result, the punishment that we had to. God is a good God, but He doesn't just allow things happen without taking the responsibility. Us to take the responsibility. How do you view? I mean, I can't imagine. So how many kids you think roughly? How many babies you have already helped to welcome to the world?
Roughly. I think that I've had like 270 babies since I've been working here in Houston.
Okay.
And then like 40-ish babies
before that.
As a student. Mm-hmm. And then as a labor and delivery nurse, probably had 100. Sounds like a lot, but I did a lot of triage and things like that. So, and worked at busier hospitals. Mm-hmm. So I probably had 100 catches before that. Okay. But I don't say I deliver the baby because the mom does that part. I'm just catching or helping her catch. So.
Yeah. So, but we're talking about hundreds of babies, right? Over the last 15 some
over
years.
The last 19 years.
19 years. Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about every couple of weeks, had at least one baby, or every other week.
Yeah, as a nurse, maybe, like once a month. But as a midwife, I mean, I've had like 5 in 29 hours. Oh. So usually it's here my average has been like 50 to 60 a year.
Oh, that's a lot of babies.
So,
but you also not only, that's a joy. That mm-hmm. reminds me of in the book of John when Jesus remind them, when the baby is here, the mom forgets about the pain, right? And it's not the pain that's not there anymore. It's you overlook at it because the joy is too much more, right?
Yeah. I liken it to climbing a mountain. So, like, you don't know how many steps it's going to take. Your legs are going to be burning. It's hard, but the view from the top is unmatched. Yeah, and generally, especially with the natural birth, there is a bit of a euphoria, a bit of adrenaline high that happens after the baby comes. That kind of washes some of that. You don't really forget. I know people say that you forget like if you were to get pregnant again, you would remember. Before the baby comes, you'll be like, oh
You'll
yeah,
never
I remember. Oh no. So
Here again.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you really forget, but it definitely softens the edges. And once they're in your arms, it feels all worth it.
Yeah.
I haven't ever had parents tell me it wasn't worth it. But anyways, yeah. I don't know. It's just really beautiful in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were talking about the sin, making childbearing harder, and I'm not going to totally say that I'm glad childbearing is so hard, but I've seen it give moms the best gift, and sometimes the longer, harder labor gives a bigger gift, because I've seen women go to how far they thought they could go, and then how far they thought they could go again. And I've had women,
further and further and further.
I've had women tell me, like, I got to the max that I thought I ever would be capable of, like 7 times before the baby came.
Yeah.
But at the end, they feel like a superwoman, because they're like, if I could do that, I could do anything that this baby needs. And I can, I'm not going to let my mind limit me and tell me you only are capable of this again. Not that we want to jump in and do hard things all the time, but there's just so much growth in that. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Until we get there, it's hard to realize what we are really capable to do.
Right. Unless we get pushed. And we don't volunteer usually for that really hard stuff, but there's like character development. There's like having new awareness of what, you're capable of, what, and of course we're looking to God, right? So he's walking with us through it. He carry us through it. I don't know. It's just a new and wonderful, like you really do emerge from birth a different person.
Yeah. What was it like when you were welcoming the first baby came in your career? How did that impact you? Do you remember the feeling of it?
My first birth as a healthcare provider, my first birth in school, my first birth as a labor and delivery nurse, my first of my own births.
There are so many. we don't have enough time here.
Right, I know. So, honestly, my very first birth ever, that was, like I said, all my births in nursing school ended up in a cesarean. So my first birth as a nurse, labor and delivery nurse, I'd been hired as labor and delivery nurse, never seen a birth but my own. And that one wasn't like overly memorable. Like it was memorable, but it wasn't like super meaningful. So it was a young mom that was high on meth and had no idea about anybody in her room, and it was all hands on deck to hold her because she was out of control, and the baby was preterm and got sent not life flighted, but to a bigger hospital. We were in a community hospital, and then there were people in a room that had there was a court order for them not to be there, so there were like police involvement. It wasn't like a really beautiful warm birth at all, but I think sometimes God does that because he's like, are you really up for this challenge? So I'm going to throw the really hard stuff at you first.
Okay.
So I don't know, but I could talk about my own birth, which was, that one is, very much why I do what I do now. So, but we get all kinds. So when you're in the hospital, you see a lot of that. Out of hospital, we don't see as much of that. But
right. Yeah. So my picture was totally wrong.
I know. I was like, I don't know if you really want that one.
So 100% transparent. I was imagining this emotional moment. Sarah was the first time she sees a baby. I was so emotional. It's so good, and the fact is, God is questioning you. Hey, are you ready for this challenge?
Yeah.
So, your own children, did you go through the 100% natural way, like no painkiller and anything?
Yes. So, yeah, we showed up at the hospital. I remember I was like, going to the restroom and changing into that cute gown they give you, right? And Chad's like,
cute.
calling his family, be like, we're here. She's going to get the epidural. And I'm like, I do not know what he's talking about. I think he wanted me to get the epidural, so he didn't have to see me in pain. But I had a hospital-based midwife, and I was able to labor upright and in the tub and squatting, and I didn't have an IV. And so I was able to be in all the places, and my actual labor was pretty quick. But I pushed for like 3.5 hours,
Oh my gosh.
and had a baby that was 9 pounds, 3 ounces facing the wrong direction. And I knew, well, in my head while I was laboring in the tub, I was like, I got to practice what I preach. I got to practice what I preach. I got to practice what I preach. Because I was like, I want to stay away from that cascade of interventions, which is, start the Pitocin, then the epidural, and then the internal monitors, and then, it just kind of goes down with the ultimate intervention being cesarean birth. Yeah. So anyway, I was like, I want to stay far away. And if I had got an epidural, I would not have been able to feel well enough to push that huge baby out in the wrong position. But afterwards, I just felt like Superwoman. Yeah, I had a really bad tear. So that part was a story in itself. But I just knew that I would not have been able to get that baby out had I had an epidural. Also, had I not had the support of my midwife and my family, and been able to be upright and moving around. So anyway, I checked out every book at because I was a orthopedic nurse before that, so I wasn't labor and delivery. But I went to the library and checked out like every book on birth, and I found like Birthing from Within, and it's kind of like learning how to recover from a traumatic birth, which because of the bad tear, it was helpful. But anyway, I just felt like in that moment I was being called to walk that road with other moms, be with them, listen to them, so that they could come away with that same kind of empowering feeling, like those growth moments, so they could go confidently into parenting and feel like, okay, I can provide for this baby, and we're a team. And
and I think, you talk about superwoman. Every woman has a child. We're superwoman.
Right.
Husbands, if you are watching, don't turn it off yet. We have something for you. I promise. But I think in life, pretty much is the same thing. Men have their struggles. Women have our struggles. I think men's struggles come after the babies are here. They're taking on some more responsibility the first time. I've heard people say, for dads, it's hard to have that first time connection. For some of them are like super, super quick first time connection. As soon as they cut the cord, they like, oh, this is my kid, right? I also heard some dad says, oh, pretty much after 2 years, when the babies can play with me, that's when I start to really feel like I know I'm the dad, but I really feel like I have the connection with this baby. But I think pretty much in life, a lot of things are like giving a birth, right?
For sure.
And being a woman, having the pleasure it's hard to say, it's a pleasure, having the pleasure to go through the process.
Yeah, for feeling a baby move inside your body, being able to breastfeed, be the mom.
Yeah. I mean, just the final giving the birth, that the pushes and the pain and stuff like that. Afterwards, it's still, a lot of going on and need to finish. But as you said, we sometimes don't see what we're really capable to do. But then we climb this mountain on top and we see this view, or we're overcoming this deal that we thought we couldn't get through. Because God says He's not giving us anything that our little shoulders we can't hold, right? Because with His grace and His power, He's empower us to get through everything. I'm glad I'm not a midwife. I don't think I can handle that.
The hours are rough.
Yeah, the hours are very rough. But also, personal life, because of this job, the special job that you have, you were able to homeschooling your kids, right? You and Chad, both of you are pouring a lot of your times and energies, and you also traveled, and being a midwife, and also traveled.
I was labor and delivery nurse when I traveled.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little harder to travel as a midwife. But yeah, well, you talked about what dad's role is in this, but like babies don't come out without, in most cases, right? Without your most important support people. And that is usually dad. It's teamwork there. And dad is involved in that very much. But you like teamwork to get the baby in there, teamwork to get the baby out, teamwork for parenting.
That's another episode.
Teamwork for parenting. This is not one-sided. So it's definitely a team. So, and I think that speaks to God's design too, because we, as mom and dad, woman and man, complement each other in our roles within the family unit and, you know, in becoming parents and all of that. So, yeah, we did homeschool. We do homeschool. Now, our kids are bigger now, which I don't know that I'd be able to homeschool a young person that needs like consistent, like right on them all the time at this job, because it is a lot of hours. But we have worked our schedule so that my husband and I complement each other and are with the kids most of the time. We have a senior in high school and an 8th grader. So at this point in time, they can do some work independently. So that does help. But yeah, I have the best support team. So my husband, we called him when I was travel nursing my manager, and he really is like our family manager. So he makes it all happen. I can't really take any credit for that. Usually I come up with ideas and he helps us like actually accomplish them.
So God put you guys together.
Yeah.
For a good reason. Right?
Yeah. He has told me before, like, what do you like stay up at night thinking about ways to torture me? And what he means by that is I like come up with these really great ideas that we just need to do. And he then feels like he has to solve the problem, you know?
Right.
But anyway, I feel like God's used that.
Yes.
Our travel nursing journey was his idea.
Oh.
Chad's idea, because we'd wanted to take our kids homeschooling and see the nation. And so we were like, well, it's going to cost us, you know, these calculations could have been way off, but we were like thinking we need at least like $18,000 to travel for 3 months, doing like probably a lot of campgrounds and things like that, not hotels necessarily. And that would give us like 1 night in most states, 2 in the big states. And we're like, we aren't going to be able to do any of the states well like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, he was like, what do you think about travel nursing? And I was like, scary. Scary. So, but the more we talked about it, the more we're like, well, this is a means to being able to take our kids and travel, because then we have an income while we're going. Because we're like, if we have to save up $18,000 and we're both working, and like that's going to take us so long to be able to save that up, to be able to go, and then it will be not enough time to do anything either. So anyway, so we felt like, you know, God had given us this dream to, it felt like we were jumping off a cliff, and of, you know, known and comfort to depending fully on God every single day for our sustenance and a place to sleep. Because in travel nursing, you don't have your job until, you know, up to 2 months in advance, but usually it's like 1 or 2 weeks in advance for the next job.
A contract or something. Yeah, like
yes. So, and then when you go to a contract, it's usually for 3 months. So we could pick a general area and try to get a contract in that place, and then that was our hub, and we were able to go out and visit all the things in that general area. But it was pretty great. It's not the places that we went that were so great; it was the people and the relationships. Sorry, this keeps sliding. So I could keep adjusting it. I'm sorry. But it ended up being like, you know, of course, I think all of our family thought we were crazy and that we wouldn't be successful. My grandpa even told me, like, as he was with us for second anniversary of, leaving on this trip, he was like, I didn't think you were going to make it. And I was like, thank you.
Grandpa.
Thank you, Grandpa. It was in the most love possible. But, our families are sometimes the last to support us because they worry about us most.
Yes, you're right.
So, when you feel like convicted that you're supposed to do this thing, or, I really feel like God gave us this dream. It's be disrespectful to him for us to not do it. Like we don't trust him to take care of us. So we just have to do it. So, anyway, he always provided. We always had a next contract at least a month in advance, except for the very first one. We had to jump off the cliff. I think I had a contract like maybe a week before we were supposed to leave.
Okay.
So, but I had already like put in my 2 weeks at work, and we're like, well, what do we do? Just camp it at a friend's house in another state until we find out, because you don't want to come right back with your tail between your legs. But no, that first job took us a little bit of time, but other than that, we had things we had a job well in advance, and God provided for all of our needs. But also, as we would come to each assignment, it's like there was a job there for us. So not like physical job, like certain people that were in our path. Like I got to carpool with a couple people at my first job because I lived in a town that was like 35 miles from the hospital because it was on a reservation. Okay. But there was a lot of deep conversations that happened in the carpooling with not Christian people necessarily, that like we got to really get into the depth of like just like who they are and some of the hurts, and just like talking through all of that stuff. Like I got to specifically, I always thought, my goal was to boost the morale on the unit everywhere I was going. So there's always some dynamics that you have to like figure out, and how you're going to fit in that and how you can positively affect it. So I don't know. There was always positive things, and Chad and the kids also, like we got involved in the church wherever we were at. Chad was able to help cook at a soup kitchen, and just serve the community. Sometimes we were near family and they were going through things, like we purposefully got an assignment next to where my grandpa lived right after his wife, my grandma, died. So we could help him pack up his house because he was moving in with my uncle. So we were able to be used in a lot of different ways. So it was awesome.
But as I said earlier, your obedience, right? You have to obey. You have to jump off the cliff first.
Yes.
Before you can see the beauty. We talk about climb the mountain. We talk about jumping the cliffs today. But God has used that trip. How many years was that?
That was 2.5 years.
2.5 years on the road. There's from knowing everything, jump into the unknown. Into the end. Okay, I'm not
with 3 little kids.
With 3 little kids, and there's so many things you don't know. We don't know what God has planned for us out there until we really let go our comfort, a comfortable life. Jump out of the pool and jump off the cliff and just follow Him. And from your story, ended up God uses that for many other things. It's not just for the kids to travel with you, and not just for providing, but also for growth, right? For relationship with others, community, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I do want to ask you one more question regarding your career and your job. And we talk about the beauty of it. Little chubby babies coming out. We also know things are not always working out the way they're supposed to, right? There are sad stories happening. I don't know how often you pray along with the patients, with the moms. They're not all Christians, right?
Right.
But you are going to pray no matter what. Correct?
Not always out loud.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean.
Often I do get to. pray out loud with them. But not always out loud. But birth is, I mean, things happen.
Yeah.
So you don't go to work without God.
Right. That would be silly.
That would be very silly. I know
Especially
my boss
this
is
kind of,
like,
yeah.
she's like, I don't know how anyone does midwifery without being a Christian, because there's so many unknowns and things that are out of your control. So really, we're lifeguarding. It's not like we're controlling this process.
Yeah.
So we're just constantly like, you know, is mom stable? Is baby stable? You know, what are the red flags? So you are praying throughout that. So yeah, and I get to pray for the moms and the babies and the family, and you know,
and sometimes even though the other person isn't Christian, I found, especially when they're going through some hard times in their life and critical, like super important moments, they wouldn't mind us praying, right? They wouldn't mind us praying for them, for the good, for the blessings and stuff like that. But well, let's say when things do happen and we have, you know, still born and baby dies, how does that impact you, and how do you help the family to go through that kind of just tragedy?
Well, that is like crossing a river and seeing the next stone and then the next stone. You don't always know what's going to be right all the way through. I don't know if you call this a blessing or not, but my sister has lost 6 babies. That's not a blessing, but because I've walked through that with her, I know a lot of the things that they're going to process through, and the things that are helpful and the things that are hurtful. So I can give them anticipatory guidance about those things. That's another one of those really hard things we talked about earlier that God has redeemed or used. So it gets used for the positive in my work. And we get to, you know, welcome beautiful babies and encourage moms a whole lot. But it's just as important to be there and walk through the really difficult. Full-term demises, which is a loss of a baby at the end of pregnancy, not in labor. Those things happen. And so to walk with a mom through that, you can cry alongside them. Usually, it sounds weird, but usually laughter still has a place in there. Laughter is healing, and they don't want every time somebody approaches them to be down and crying, because they're trying to process and they need to be able to cry when they need to cry, but they also need, it's a balance. So being able to read that in the room and be there and around them and with them, and so they're not alone. And then you know, just being honest and upfront about the things they're probably going to experience and feel, and tailoring your care to what that specific person needs. So you can be like, okay, so for example, you're going to come in for your 2-week postpartum appointment, and you haven't been back in the building since you found out your baby passed and labored. So what do you feel like you need? Do we need to do this appointment in this room, or, you know, in the front? Do you feel like you can come in? Like, or like, usually they're not ready for it at 2 weeks, but at 6 weeks, sometimes like going into those rooms where they found out there was no heartbeat, or, you know, I mean, being able to process through some of those things and work through it, or, you know, the appointment to look totally different. Like, we're just going to sit in the living room and drink coffee and, you know, talk and not have it feel like a medical appointment at all.
Right.
I mean, we can go to the funeral. We can, you know, be available for those middle of the night texts when their mind's circling about whatever possible thing that they feel like they maybe did to tribute to the loss of their baby, which generally is not the case at all, but that's where most moms' brains are going to go. Like,
what did I do?
What did I do wrong? I want to pinpoint a cause, which often you don't ever find out the cause.
Right.
So just kind of walking through that with them and like giving them awareness. Like, you're probably going to have trouble sleeping for at least 2 weeks, but probably more than that. Yeah. And so what do you need or want? Would you want to try a prescription sleep aid? Like, I don't know. That's an example. But just being able to say from the get-go, like, what they're probably going to see, feel, experience next, so they know before they get there. And then, the next step. Yeah. And then the next step. Yeah. I don't know. But we just got to love them through it.
Yeah. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a long process. Oh, yes. Right? And there are certain steps you can walk through them with them together alongside. Right. There are many days and nights they're going to have to.
Maybe years. Maybe
years too.
Because this will impact them through their entire next pregnancy.
Right. That too.
Yeah. And beyond, probably.
So that's professional perspective. Personally, how do you process it to yourself? Because you see it more than... Gosh, I don't even know. If I see it once, I probably will be undone. I mean, it's just so hard to process it. But you got it. It's part of your job. You have to. I know your strong faith that is holding you up, right? And at that moment, you need to be strong enough to help them. You can't be like break down and
no, yeah. Right. Sometimes you're in the middle of that crisis, and they're looking straight at you, like locked eyes, and they're like counting on you this entire way through, and you're like,
you still have mom to take care of, you still have the family to so. But afterwards, let's say everybody is gone, and you're back home in your bed by yourself. How do you process those lost lives?
It takes me a while. So, usually you're going over every scenario in your head a bit too. Definitely I have to give those to God. I have difficulty sleeping myself sometimes, because every time you have quiet time sleeping, you think through these things, and what the family is going through. At one time where we almost lost a mom, and I literally was in the waiting room with the family texting my boss, like, if something happens, if we lose this mom, I'm toast. Like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I've had moments where felt like a little mad at God, because, like, you're my protector. Right. Where were you? Yeah. So you didn't protect me, because it feels very vulnerable. Because sometimes, we live in a really litigious society. You could do everything perfectly, and serve this family with all of your heart. And if they feel like, and sometimes they don't even have to have a reason. They'll, like, be mad at you for it. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's part of the denials and anger are part of the grief process. Mm-hmm. So, it's really hard to not take that stuff really personal, because you have given them everything. Right. Like, it's a heart out on the table kind of job. Mm-hmm. So, like, your heart is there, you're giving them a piece of yourself, really. Yeah. So, it's hard not to take that personal. And especially big, hard things, you carry those with you forever. Yeah. Sometimes I have to, like, shaky getting into work, park in my parking spot, like, go directly into that room where that bad thing happened, and just be in there and breathe the air, and let it kind of sink in, and just be in that space, because I can't be afraid of that space.
So I want to land at, I feel like today we probably talk to most of the mama audience, if they are in a mama role, like we are, going through pregnancy, getting ready for babies, or not really. We're talking about everybody.
Well, even growth as a human, going through hard things.
Yes. Going through hard things, it's just like giving a birth. that we said. I think we can land there. I wanted to invite you to share one of many of your favorite Bible verse and tell us why.
Okay, so this one has only been my favorite really since we were called to jump off the cliff into travel nursing. But it's Proverbs 16:9. It is talking about how the heart of a man plans his ways, but God establishes his steps. Mm-hmm. And we've found that like continuously, as long as we're trust and obey. And my like word for this year is to like totally surrender. Then God takes us exactly where he wants to go. So we can make plans, and that's great. We are praying about those things. So those are probably the right-ish direction, but we always need to be open to God's redirection or to his like inconveniencing us for his will. I always like say it that because in the moment it feels like an inconvenience, like, I have a flat tire, but there's somebody we're supposed to talk to at the tire shop. I don't know what the case would be or, but we just need to be always open to that. And God has been very faithful, continuously faithful to us and to me and my family in provisions, in like never like 3 steps in advance, but like, okay, this is the next step. This is the next step in establishing our steps.
Yeah. You said not 3 steps in the time.
No.
At the time.
No.
I don't think we're supposed to know more than 1 step. Sometimes if God
maybe we couldn't handle it.
Yeah, and you can't handle like if he shows you 10 steps from now, you'll be like, oh, I don't want to go there, right? Because we're not ready yet. Mm-hmm. Those moments, those inconvenience moments are like dark rooms. They're preparing us for better characters, for better usage for the Lord, right? For those things.
Well, and maybe those are the important moments. Yeah. We think these big achievements are important moments, but like I think I said at the beginning, we're like on this earth for relationships. Like we're not on the earth to like accomplish something big, like monetarily or
they're temporary. They're so temporary.
Like invention or whatever. Those things are they're temporal. Is that what you say? Like those are this worldly. That's not like eternal in any way. But the relationships
and love
are.
Yeah. That's so good. The last favor I want to invite you to pray for our audience. Today we have people all over the world. We don't know them. Maybe some of them are getting ready to give birth. Who knows? New dads, right? People going through difficult moments in their lives. Or they're happy. They're just so blessed. Or maybe they don't even know God yet. So bring some encouragement and pray for our audience. Would you please?
Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for the people that are taking the time to hear this. And I just pray that you would wrap them in your arms and give them peace. And I pray that you would show yourself to them in a way they've never known you before. We are all going through stretching and growing moments. And in some way, in labor, in becoming what we are to become. I just pray that you would touch each and every life that is listening to this and that is out there, and just make yourself known to them, and so they can know your love and peace and direction, and that they can know that they're not walking this hard journey alone. You're walking along beside them, just like I get to walk along beside a laboring mama, and they're not in this hard struggle of life by themselves. I just pray that you would continue to encourage them in just exactly what they need in the moment. I think you're the God of details, right? So like when that light turns green right at the right moment, or like that lost coin is there, whatever the example is, like in that small like I needed to find that paper, and it showed up like moments you would whisper in their ear, like, I love you. I care about the details of your life. I see you. I know you. You're my child. I want a relationship with you. I want to be there to help and to like be with you. Yes. So I just pray that you would be there and just really love on them. Yeah. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was so good. Are you tired of watching us? Okay, everyone. Again, this is Grace and New Life. Because of His grace, we have this new life. We're so blessed. And we're so blessed that you are here together with us today. If you're listening, hit us up. If you have a story that you like to share, we will put it on air to share with the world. Today's podcast is brought to you by Payroll Vault Spring, Texas, partnering with GPS Business Solutions. Your story does matter. It matters a lot to the Lord. It matters to others as encouragement as well. This is Sarah Owens. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Love you so much. When you say push, like when we're talking about that, the birth process, when you say push, I was going to say, don't say that word. I still can feel the pain. It was so painful. Okay, good.